Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I am your host, Eric Smith. Today, I am talking about The Queen by Nick Cutter. This is from a publisher whose name I can't read because it's too small and I need new glasses. But, first of all, I love this cover. All this chewed up so you can see the pages. Fantastic stuff. And you got, ooh, look at that spooky thing on her face. For the nutshell, I'm just going to read the inside flap. And part of the reason for that is that I have not read the inside flap since before I bought the book. And I'm not sure how much I can talk about. So let's see what this has to say. In quotes here, it's impossible to know another person, isn't it? To step past that locked door of their secretive inner self. But honestly, do you even want to know? End quote. One sunny morning in June, Margaret Carpenter wakes up to find a new iPhone on her doorstep. She switches it on and is greeted by a text from her best friend, Charity Atwater. The problem is, Charity's been missing for over a month. Most people in town, even the police, thinks she's dead. Margaret and Charity have been lifelong friends. They share everything, know the most intimate details about each other, except for the destructive secret hidden from them both. A secret that will trigger a chain of events ending in tragedy, bloodshed, and death. And now Charity wants Margaret to know her story, the real story. In a narrative that takes place over one feverish day, Margaret follows a series of increasingly disquieting breadcrumbs as she forges deeper into the mystery of her best friend, a person she never truly knew at all. So there's your nutshell. For the too long didn't watch folks, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. And you know what? I do not trust myself. So let's just check. Yes, 4 out of 5 stars. And before I get into it, I have to say that this is the 5th and final book in my mystery book bundle. For people who don't know, occasionally I do what I'm calling book bundles, where I take 5 books that all have some sort of connection. The first one I ever did was 5 books that had been made into movies. And so I've done this a few times already. And for these 5 books, of which this is the 5th in a row, I have not stated what the connection is between the 5 books. I want people to guess, to figure it out for themselves. This is the final book. So your final clue. Pretty sure by the time this video comes out, people will have already figured it out. Because I don't think it's that difficult. I wasn't like trying to fool everybody. Anyway, let's get back to The Queen by Nick Cutter. Man, looking at it in the screen, it just has more depth. It does very much look like I'm looking at a cover that's been chewed up in the pages behind it. I dig that. So, we start off with a cold open where something incredibly horrific is happening that I'm not going to tell you about. And then we jump to part 1, morning, one day earlier, Friday, June 15th, 2018. So that's where when it's taking place. And this is Margaret getting this mystery iPhone that apparently is, she's getting texts from her missing friend Charity. And so we're going to get backstory and everything. And the majority of the book is first person Margaret. But there are sections that are third person, focusing on a different character. And here is where I don't know how much I can say to avoid spoilers, because none of it is mentioned in that inside flap stuff that I read. So there's much more going on than what we have from this inside flap, except maybe the part where it says, except for the destructive secret hidden from them both. That's the big thing. That's the crux of the story. So the first person parts feel like one kind of story, and one of the characters even mentions 13 Reasons Why, which is a book I have not read, a show I have not seen, but essentially in that, I believe, someone has committed suicide and then left, I think it's cassette tapes, for someone to listen to that explains lots of things, reveals secrets. I don't know, again, because I've never read it or seen it, but one of the characters mentions this whole having the iPhone and getting these texts and these voice files and things from someone who's definitely missing, presumed dead by so many people, has a 13 Reasons Why kind of vibe. And it is taking us through, even though the story takes place over the course essentially of one day, with the exception of some things at the end. We're getting a lot of flashbacks and a lot of past filled in. Then there's the parts that are third person, following this other character that I really can't talk about, but has to do with that crux, that destructive secret being kept from everyone. As I said, it's in third person, and so there's a point where we're introduced to this character, we're getting their backstory, we're getting things that eventually are going to tie into the Margaret part of the story, and it's all well written. It's that Nick Cutter writing. I found that it was captivating. I think Margaret is an interesting character, and there is an afterword. I don't remember if he calls it an afterword or what he calls it. Not the epilogue. I guess it's just in the acknowledgments, where he talks about a bunch of stuff. He talks at one point about not being confident about writing a teenage girl, especially first-person teenage girl, so he considered changing Margaret to Mike. But I think he does, as someone who's not a teenage girl, from my perspective, I think he does a fine job of portraying a teenage girl. I have had quite a few sisters who, at varying points in their lives, were teenage girls. Now, I think this is the point where I will say, and this perhaps could be a little spoilery in a general sense. As I was reading this, especially when I got to a certain point, I kept thinking, what if, and maybe you've asked yourself this question too, I doubt it, but what if Michael Crichton had written 80s zebra horror? I think that's what we would have here. Now, in the acknowledgments, he talks a little bit, Nick Cutter talks a little bit about inspirations and things, and he says, in The Queen, you may see a shimmer of Picnic at Hanging Rock, a flash of The Perks of Being a Wallflower, a glint of Saturday Night Fever, a flicker of Joe Hill's story pop art from Promising Young Woman, H.R. Geiger, and Cronenberg, and Barker, and Carpenter, and Bradbury, and Linda Paston's poem To a Daughter Leaving Home. Readers may add the Alien film series to that list, which is fair, he says, but to my mind, both Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett, screenwriters, took their cues from the Insect Kingdom, blah, 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 blah. So, Picnic at Hanging Rock, Promising Young Woman, Perks of Being a Wallflower, all these things. None of them came to my mind while I was reading it, but of the things I'm familiar with, Saturday Night Fever not being one of them, I can see where he's coming from. But, as I said, to me, it was Michael Crichton that kept popping into my mind, and when you read this, I think you're going to understand why. I know the general idea, maybe even less than that, of Saturday Night Fever, but not nearly enough to know why that would be mentioned in regards to this story. But anyway, this is, in my mind, great modern pulpy horror with elements that I am a huge fan of, but I'm not going to mention specifically because that would be quite spoilery. I do think the title and the cover image are going to give you plenty of clues that, again, aren't. I'm really surprised at how little it actually tells you in the inside flap, which is great. But if you just go by that inside flap, there are certainly things that are going to really, really take you by surprise. This is not 13 Reasons Why. This is not a Gone Girl type thriller. Even though there are points where it might feel like that, or at least a young adult version of that sort of thing. Because again, we have a missing person, someone and there's actually more than one. There are other missing people other than just Charity, but she's the main one that we're concerned with because the narrator of most of the story is Charity's best friend, and allegedly it's Charity on the other end of this mystery iPhone. So there are quite a few elements that feel like that sort of Gone Girl or the Girl on the Train or whatever, that kind of thriller. But this is absolutely not that kind of thriller. This, for me, is true pulpy horror, body horror with elements of that kind of thriller. It might even be that which would it be? Would it be the bones of the structure or that kind of thriller? But what's built on those bones is a grotesque monstrosity? Or would the outside be the elements of those types of thrillers, and it's hiding the monstrosity underneath? You'll have to read it and decide that for yourself, I suppose. But it's actually 4.5 out of 5, but you can't give halves on Goodreads. I've mentioned this numerous times. But yes, absolutely a 4.5 out of 5. The Queen by Nick Cutter. It has so many elements of things that I like. It's well written. The characters are interesting. There is crazy stuff happening. It is wild. And yeah, it's definitely a 4.5 out of 5-star book. The Queen by Nick Cutter, published maybe, let's see if I can read it on the copyright page, Gallery Books, an imprint of Simon & Schuster. I just wasn't able to read that little bit right there. So there you have it. And as I said, this is the final book in the mystery book bundle. Have you figured out yet what is tying these 5 books together? And if you haven't guessed yet, let me know in the comments below. I don't really have a question for this video. Mainly because this is the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th video I've made this evening, and I have one more to go. So I'm starting to feel a little burned out. So I don't really have a question or any recommendations. So discuss whatever you want down in the comments below. And of course, put your guess. If you haven't already, if we haven't blown the lid wide open on the mystery book bundle, let me know if you figured it out down in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post spoiler warning. We try to be polite here at the Low Budget Review Show. Please like, share, and subscribe. All the usual YouTube stuff. If you'd care to follow me on other social media, I'll have links for my Instagram and Bluesky in the description below. That's all I've got. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. I have been Eric Smith, and until next time, read more books.